2023 was a preposterously exciting season. Yes, house money, and the Packers gained invaluable experience in the postseason. The stakes change. The pressure changes. And the window is now. It is officially on. And the Packers have to do everything they can to maximize it. Plus, our pal Lily Zhao joins us to talk about what comes next this offseason. All of that on today's Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the most exciting way and the easiest way, frankly, to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. There is plenty of goodwill and excitement and optimism about this Green Bay Packers team. All of it is earned and deserved. The amount of young, talented, cost-controlled players, and that last part is essential. When you want to build a team, you got to make sure the finances are in order. You can usually make it all work out, but it gets harder when you got to pay top-end quarterback money. Friend of the show, Kay Adams, On Up and Adams, made a point that I had not yet considered. Hadn't really fully gotten my brain around offseason mode. Jordan Love's going to get a deal. And that means the clock is ticking.
The truth is, they missed a trip to the Super Bowl. Squandered, period. That's it. They had a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. They had this Niners team on the ropes, and they let it slip away. It is, everyone's saying like this house money thing. All you have to do is look at any interview at any locker yesterday and see that these are not guys who were like, that was cool. We'll see you next year. We'll be here again. They were dejected. Some of them know it's never going to be the same. There's change coming, not only in that locker room in Green Bay, but everywhere outside of it that's going to affect how things go for them. I love the sense of urgency out of LaFleur. And when you look at the now, as he talks about it, and the offseason, you'd have to think Jordan Love's getting a long-term extension in place of that one-year deal. That's going to happen. This right now is their best chance to build the best team around him before the big numbers take over and sort of eat away at the cap. It's a young team. They do have a bright future. They're all excited, but the truth is, and I don't mean to be this, but like the clock is ticking.
You just don't know how many cracks you're going to get at this. They had an opportunity. Aaron Jones, 30 years old next year. How many more years are you going to get a full season from Kenny Clark? These 300-plus pound nose tackles, the toll that takes on your body, it's car crashes, 50, 60 of them a game. The Packers, yes, okay, they had some injury bad luck with David Bakhtiari and Jair Alexander and Christian Watson and Aaron Jones. That's true. But in the postseason, much like in 2021, they had their dudes. And much like in 2021, their dudes played like dudes for the most part. The thing about the Jordan Love contract is you can only do so much with the funny money. He's going to get 40, 45 million a year. And when you look at the totality of the contract, it's going to be, 4 years, 160. That's the Daniel Jones deal. It's going to be more than that. but you're going to have these balloon years at the end. The Packers like to structure deals this way. You're going to have 2024. They're probably going to leave that year alone. Then you have 2025 where you got to ramp it up, probably double it. That's when it's like you're going to be between 28 and 32, 34 million on the cap. And then these numbers are going to balloon 50, 55, 60 million on the cap because the Packers like to set their contracts up that way. They want to be able to go 2 years and let's see. With everybody. Now, maybe with a quarterback like Jordan Love, you're sold. And it's an Aaron Rodgers style contract where there's more guaranteed money spread out a little bit. So you don't have to make those balloon payments, but you want the flexibility right now. Well, if you want that flexibility right now, then you have to do something with that flexibility. You have to go out and make some moves. You can't just be like, oh, we love our young, scrappy team. The vibes are immaculate right now. Aaron Jones said this is the greatest team he's ever been on. They love each other in that locker room, but everything changes once the season ends. Everything changes. So, understanding that, the Packers have to be willing to explore every opportunity to make this team maximally better. If that means a big name free agent, if that means trying to swing a trade for an impact player, if that means trading up in the draft, you can take 25 and 41 and get into the top 10. What if one of these impact receivers, what if Malik Neighbors is there at 8? And you can get up there and get him. I understand. We just talked about yesterday. You don't need to get somebody. But wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be awesome to get a field tilting player like that? It would. Now, there's not a corner really to go get. There's not a safety really to go get. Those are positions where the Packers have a clear need. So otherwise, we're talking about free agency. We're talking about trades. The Packers cannot treat this like, oh, this is just going to last forever. They took too much of a laissez-faire approach, especially in the middle seasons of the Aaron Rodgers era. From 2011 to, say, 2014. They didn't do enough to buttress those teams. And then again, you know, you got Julius Peppers, and you make those runs with him. And then after that, the Aaron Rodgers era, they did very little. Ted Thompson did very little. It's why ultimately he gets transitioned out. You bring in Brian Gutekunst. I'm not saying they need to go out and spend a bunch of money, but maybe you do something like make a big swing with David Bakhtiari. Trade him, not necessarily to the Jets, trade him for a piece. How about player for player trade? Wouldn't that be fun? Look, I haven't even really wrapped my head around what some of the options could be. But you go from house money to we got to win now like yesterday. They have 2024 and 2025 maybe. Even if Jordan Love is a top 6, top 8 quarterback, which he was this year, even if he's this guy, if he's 10% better, 15% better, and who knows, he might be 25% better. Like year 2 as a starter, now you're comfortable. Now they can build the offense around what he's good at. You've got all these young pieces. You can build the offense around what they're good at. Look at what this Matt LaFleur offense did with Aaron Rodgers in year 2. He was the MVP. He had his best season since 2011, one of his best seasons ever. This offense can be a lot better. This can be, I said this immediately after the game, this can be a championship caliber team, but you have to be willing to do everything that is necessary to maximize your opportunity right now. Right now. There is no saving the powder and keeping it dry for later. Nuh-uh, that's not going to fly. You have to try and win right now. You always have to be trying to win right now. The Kansas City Chiefs understand this. They have taken some big swings. Even, they overpaid for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but they don't win on Sunday without Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So they have a quarterback who's operating at a different level. They have Travis Kelce, all those things, but they've retooled that defense. They didn't do it all with money, to be sure. You got to hit on some draft picks too. And so the Packers have done that. They have all these draft picks in this draft. It's silly to be like, well, they have to make sure that they hit on these picks. Yeah. If it were that easy, you would just do it every year. No one would ever miss on draft picks. But this draft is particularly important to their future because these are the guys that are going to be cost controlled in 2-3 years when you got to pay Christian Watson, when you got to figure out what to do with Aaron Jones, when you might have to re-up Jair Alexander, when you have to make decisions on someone like Rashawn Gary, who's going to need a new contract in 2 or 3 years if he keeps performing. You need to backfill with those cost control players. You can't just assume this is going to happen every year. You can't, because it's not. Look at the Bills. Josh Allen is an incandescent talent. They can't get over the hump. And they've tried. It's not like they've gone out and they signed Von Miller, which is proof that, by the way, just trying is not enough. You got to get lucky too. And that's what makes this kind of loss in a game where you had it even more disappointing, because you just never know when these things are going to coalesce. And you never know for how long. So you have to now flip into it's win time. And it's not forget the future and kick the can down the road forever, but it's understanding you can't just wait for tomorrow and hope for internal development. The Packers squandered too much of the Aaron Rodgers era trying to only draft and develop, and it just doesn't happen. All right, we're going to get to our pal Lily Zhao in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to win 25 times your money. Well, up to 25 times your money. If you do it right, if you put the right players together, you can put $10 in and win $250. Why would you not want to do that? And you have limited opportunities to do this with football. You probably know football better than any other sport. That's why you're a Locked On Packers listener. So championship game, Super Bowl, we're running out of chances to do this. Put a couple players together, their stat projections. You know how this works. You pick more or less than the number of Prize Picks set, the stat that they pick. And you got a lineup. You got a stew going. I make that joke like 60% of the time because I like it and because it's true. And you can win up to 25 times your money. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for that first deposit match up to $100. Prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Back for one last time, should be potentially a couple more times, but it didn't play itself out like that. Lily Zhao from Fox 6 joining us. Lily, how you doing?
Peter, I think you kind of summed it up well. I think we were expecting a couple more weeks of Locked On Packers and Zhao you doing, but alas, it did not come to fruition. I'm sure we'll dive into it, but I think we should be talking Packers-Lions, but instead we're talking Packers offseason in the future. But, I'm doing well outside of that. How you doing?
I'm good. I summed it up well the third time we did this. We had a couple false starts here as we were recording before we started in here. Were you? I was kind of taken after the game when Matt LaFleur acted like we felt like we were every bit as good as this team, and they proved it on the field. But I love that about Matt LaFleur. They felt that way in 2020. They thought they absolutely should have beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They certainly felt that way about the 2021 team. But were you surprised that he was sort of that that adamant that they were like, we felt like there was stuff we could exploit. We felt like we could beat this team and we would beat this team. What was your reaction to that sort of, animating viewpoint from him after the game?
I think it was the fact that he knew that they had a win in their grasp. I mean, they had a great game plan. I think it just missed opportunities. The spot it was a bad call. I'll just put that out there. Again, just mistakes down the stretch. They had the opportunity and they couldn't seize the moment. I think that's what he was getting at. This team outplayed the top seed in the NFC probably for the entire game minus the last 5 minutes. And that's where the game was lost. So I think it's because he realizes the potential. He realizes that they were so close. And I don't fault him for being right. I mean, he reiterated it yesterday at his season-ending presser, saying we outplayed them, but unfortunately, the Niners were the ones that found a way to win the game, so they were able to finish. But I like where Matt LaFleur's head is at because, if you're talking like this against one of the best teams in the NFC on the road with a young team, you have to know the future is bright. And I think that's what we're going to be focusing on as the Packers now are in the offseason.
They are in the offseason. Is there anything that you saw in this game, that whether it was something that, underlined something we learned over the course of the season or something from that game where you just went, oh, that's like that kind of performance is what I wanted to see as you move forward here, that the Packers can take as lessons here moving forward?
Sure. I think, Jordan Love, certainly the 2-minute drill, he harped about just learning how to finish games. I know that last interception that sealed the game was uncharacteristic of what we've seen from Jordan Love, especially during that stretch where he was playing well. I had this feeling, though, because everyone was talking about the 21 touchdown to 1 interception ratio. I'm like, I feel like that's going to break. And unfortunately, it did. But, I think you look at the positives of Jordan Love, I think was the better quarterback on the field. He was making, tight throws in some small windows and, was picking up pressure well and still making plays. But I think those 2 interceptions, he would love to have back. One end of the game, one spotted them 3 points, and that was the difference in the game. But, I like the positives from this team. But I will say this, though. You look at the Darnell interception drop. You look at the 4th and 1 that they couldn't convert. Those are things that they did against Dallas. They went out there.
Lily, I have to stop you there. That they did convert. Terrible spot.
Touche.
But I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yes. And then the other one that Matt LaFleur had a challenge. I mean, that was a gimme first down, but that's neither here nor there.
An absurd spot on that one as well. Look, I don't like to be the ref. I don't think the referees cost them the game. But those were momentous calls. Let's be serious about that. There has been this interesting conversation that has come out of this game about the Packers receiving room, and we talked about it yesterday on our show. I don't believe it's better to not have an alpha number 1 receiver. I just don't believe that. Like, I think that is some PTSD from late career Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and feeling like he got a little too laser focused in on Devontae. But when you look at this room, do you think they need to look for ways to find a wide receiver 1, or do you think there can be someone who can truly separate themselves on this team? Do they need to? I don't even know if they need to.
I think, again, it's a good problem to have, but, do they need a traditional number 1 receiver to add into the room, like a veteran in the mix? I don't think so, because when you're looking at the team as a whole, they have bigger needs in other positions. So, I would say receiver is kind of on the bottom of their biggest needs per se. But that being said, I think a true number 1 could potentially emerge. It just was the options that you had at number 1. Christian Watson was out for a majority of the season. So he never really got that chance to really take onus of that top spot and say, I can run away with it and be that number 1 receiver. So if you get him back, I know they're getting his hamstring looked at to see what the issue is. If they can get him back and fully healthy, maybe he can separate next season and become that traditional number 1 receiver. But that being said, I mean, I do feel like there are a lot of guys in this room. Jaden Reed could potentially blossom into a number 1 receiver. Yeah. Romeo Doubs still, can do a lot. So I don't think they need that per se, but it wouldn't help or it wouldn't hurt, excuse me. But I don't think, I'm like, it wouldn't hurt, but I don't think that's the biggest concern that they're going to have to focus on.
It's interesting. There was a great graphic during the game that they had a different leading receiver by every month.
Yes.
And we talked about this here. Like they didn't have a 100-yard receiver until they had 3 different consecutive 100-yard receivers. We talked at various points in the season, Jaden Reed, he's just the number 1 receiver now and ended up being their leading receiver. But in the playoffs, it's Romeo Doubs. There was in the big games in the regular season against the Detroit and Kansas City, it's Christian Watson. I look across the way and go, do the 49ers truly have a traditional wide receiver one? No, they've got two guys who are really, really, really good, a third down monster in Juwan Jennings, and then George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Like, they have all these pieces. Why can't the Packers orient themselves in much the same way? I think that's something. And wouldn't it just be funny if they took a receiver in the first round?
That would be hilarious, because it would be like the narrative that no one is thinking of, and boom, Goody's like receiver.
Yeah. And there are this is a really good receiver class. Like, who knows what they like? Why? In a lot of ways, I'm kind of like, why not? Like, if you can trade 25 and 41 and go up into the top 8 and get like, Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze, like, I kind of feel like that would be a cool thing to try and do. Where are you on Christian Watson, wide receiver one? Is that still something you think can be a thing? Because I do.
I do too. And again, we've seen just his ability, whether it's to draw a double team, just to stretch the field. While he's not making catches, he's still having an impact on the field. But, I don't think he was 100% a full go. So I would like to see what he's able to do when he is fully healthy, because I just think his ability to get open, to stretch the field, the speed, I think he really has the qualities you need in a top receiver. So I really do think he can separate himself if he can just stay on the field next year. And then if that happens, hey, the Packers have a quote unquote number one, and then they have the kind of Niners dynamic where you have other guys on, the tight end position, receiver, running back, who are all really good. So it would behoove them to maybe see if that can come true next season. But I think it's just more dependent on if you can just stay on the field.
All right, we're going to get back to our pal Lily Zhao in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. He also fits so well with the guys that they have. I think that's the thing for me. Like, you have all of this physical ability. Go do some hot yoga and figure out what's going on with the hamstrings. And look, I joke about that, but like there are a lot of things that he can do. I don't think we should just assume this is who he is forever. Like, there are a lot of things, the biomechanics of movement. Like, there's so much sports science out there now. I really do hope that he can find some answers here, just for his sake, because it matters a lot to him. And he works really hard. I've felt for him all season in this. As we record this, Lily, and I'm fully understanding that we're probably going to have to cut all this out because news is going to break as soon as we get off this call. The Joe Barry of it all. I'm not even going to ask you if you think it's going to happen. At this point, I kind of don't. It doesn't even matter what we think, right? If they make a change, what kind of traits would you look for in a new defensive coordinator?
Ooh, that's a good
question. I'm not even thinking scheme necessarily, just like, are there things where you're like, what would be really great if this team could do or have this attitude, whatever it is? Like, what are the traits you'd be looking for?
I would start with third down defense, not playing so far off the line of scrimmage. I would say just finding a way to kind of scheme up when a number one receiver is going to be in town, like a Justin Jefferson, scheming up a way to kind of beat them versus sitting back in zone and hoping that pans out. But that being said, I do feel like, a new defensive coordinator coming in needs to look at their personnel. And I know they're going to have their own scheme, right? They're going to come in kind of whatever they want to concoct, but they have to look at the talent on this defense and say, how do I best utilize these guys? I do think that pressure affects every quarterback. So how much can you utilize those guys up front? But when the pressure isn't getting there, how else can we make this defense really, really good? I think that was the issue this year with this defense and maybe in years prior, where if the pressure wasn't affecting a quarterback, it just was really hard to stop anybody. Like teams are dissecting this Packers defense all the way down the field. But I would like somebody who really has that fire, that passion, and just somebody who kind of just clicks with this room, but also understands that, if something really isn't truly working, that they can kind of take some feedback from their players and go from there. But I would just say, no more third and long conversions, making it easy for everybody. That would be the first thing.
Yeah. The situational stuff, I think, has been the problem really with this team. And it was again on Saturday night. They just, when they needed to, they played really good defense really all day, all night. And it was just that last drive where Keyshawn Nixon mistimes his jump, and they're a little soft on the corner route with Carrington Valentine, but like they're completing balls to Juwan Jennings and Chris Connolly. Like, you also have to tip your cap. Like, they're just a couple nice throws, a couple nice plays by NFL players. As we look into this offseason, what are the questions that you are thinking about? Okay, how can they do this? Or what are they like? What are the things that interest you about how this team might change this offseason?
Curious to see kind of what they do with their offensive line. I think those guys play their tails off. I think the David Bakhtiari question is big. John Runyon's a free agent. We saw how emotional he was talking about wanting to come back. What do they do with him? Because just the play of the offensive line as a whole, I think, did really well down the stretch to protect Jordan. Interested to see what they do with the running back position, if they extend Aaron Jones, if they add to that room via the draft. Curious to see what they do at safety, because that last playoff game certainly didn't give a ringing endorsement at that position, unfortunately. So I'd say safety was a big one. Then, of course, giving Anders Carlson some competition at the kicker position would be something that I'm looking at.
I don't know what's going to happen with David Bakhtiari. I kind of don't even have a feel. I thought it was interesting that Matt LaFleur didn't say we want him back the other day when at his end of year press conference was asked, "Hey, do you expect David Bakhtiari back?" And he was like, "He's a really good player, right?" Like, it's just sort of like, "Oh, okay. Well, that's not the same thing as you saying you want it." It's Matt LaFleur. Let's play poker, Matt, please. This team with Jordan Love, how do you think things change for him, for this team, if and when he gets paid? Because all of the signs are pointing to they're going to give him a big money deal. I think he's earned a big money deal. Is like, what is your reaction to that, and how do you think they have to adapt, if they do have to adapt, once that happens?
I honestly don't think that there's going to be much of a change, because if Jordan Love is who we've seen this season, right? He is so even keeled that, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss, he's still the same guy at the podium. There's not really a change in his demeanor. So I do think that this extension is going to be well-deserved and well-earned, but I don't think once he gets it that there's going to be any sort of shift in how he operates or how he demands certain things. Not that he is now, but how he operates as a quarterback, I don't think changes. And I think that is going to be a big benefit for this offense, because again, they're all coming back. They're all still very young, and they're coming off a year where I think, coming into this season, I'll see the expectations were here, right? They've elevated the expectations to here, but now next season, they're going to be up here with how they performed at the end of the year. So how he handles that pressure, how he handles knowing that, while all eyes might be on the Lions per se in the division next season, Packers should be right there. How does he handle the pressure? Well, I'm saying they might be at the top next year, whatever. But I don't think he's going to be changing his demeanor or anything like that at all. But I do think that them giving him an extension really does say something to the guys in the locker room. Like, you guys believe in him as a leader. You like him as a leader. And we're going to reward him with that and say, he's your guy for years to come.
And I don't think we should underestimate what a big deal it'll be to have a full offseason for these coaches. And other teams will get a chance to study him, but like, this is the Kyle Shanahan offense, the Matt LaFleur offense, the Sean McVay offense. Defenses have been struggling to stop it for years now. for them to get an extra offseason, like, okay, now we know what Jaden Reed can do. Now we know what Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Dobbs and Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft can do with Jordan Love. Now let's build a new offense around this, or tweak the offense, obviously, to get them in positions. I think they can be even better next year. It's going to be really fun to see. Lily, we will check in with you this offseason. We can't just not have Zhao doing for 8 months now. Like, this is ridiculous. So we'll have to do it again. We appreciate everything that you have done on the show in the 2023 season, and more to come in 2024.
Thank you, Peter. Love being on this podcast. You do a great job. I love all the listeners as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And hopefully we'll do a Zhao do an off-season edition, because I love being on this thing. So thank you again for having me.
All right. Thanks to Lily Zhao for joining the show. Always great to talk with her. We'll have her back. She'll be back for sure. Busy time in the NBA calendar right now. Go check out Locked On Bucks, because that's some crazy town stuff going on right there. And we'll see. I was joking last night on Twitter, like, if you're going to fire Joe Barry, now is kind of the time. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, like if the Packers fired Joe Barry, we will be doing that. So go subscribe over on our Locked On Packers YouTube channel so you can stay Locked On Packers.